Perhaps I can start with a couple of questions. Do you ever pray for yourself? Which way is Sean going to go with this? I can see some of you thinking, should I be praying for myself or should I just be praying for other people? Okay, let me park that question. Let me ask another. How much does God need to change you? How much work has he left to do in making you like the Lord Jesus? In what area of your life do you know that you need to change? What part of your character is least Christ-like? My first heading, from strength to weakness. Jacob, we've been looking at him on and off over the last couple of months. Jacob is now going strong. God has repeatedly promised great things for him, for his family, for his descendants. As a young man, Jacob was not a very nice man indeed. His name, Jacob, meant grasper. Highly competitive. He manipulated his brother Esau out of his inheritance. He deceived his father Isaac. Jacob, for the next 20 years, gets a taste of his own medicine. He is repeatedly duped by his father-in-law Laban. He ends up with 2 envious and competitive wives. But slowly, over these last few weeks, we have detected a change in Jacob. We see him acknowledging God. We see him obeying God. We see him becoming a godly husband. And now he has 11 sons. He has much wealth. He's strong. And he's about to return to his homeland. But there is a worry. And that worry is in the form of Esau, twin brother Esau, who was out to kill him. Is Esau still out to kill him? Verse 3 of chapter 32. Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. He instructed them, "This is what you're to say to my lord Esau. Your servant Jacob says, I've been staying with Laban and have remained there till now. I have cattle and donkeys, sheep and goats, male and female servants. Now I am sending this message to my lord that I might find favour in your eyes." When the messengers returned to Jacob, they said, "We went to your brother Esau, and now he is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him." 400 men is nothing short of a small army. This is looking very dangerous. Jacob starts to develop a plan. So he thinks to himself, I'll divide my family into 2 camps. And this is desperate thinking. So at least if one lot is wiped out, at least I'll have the others. Gosh, how awful is this? So convinced was Jacob that his family was in peril, he thought to himself, well, I'm going to lose half my children, but at least I won't lose all my children. Jacob is very, very fearful indeed. Jacob prays. Amazingly, in all the weeks that we've been looking at Jacob, this is the first time that we've heard him pray. Verse 9, then Jacob prayed, "O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Lord, you who said to me, go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper. I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan 20 years ago, but now I've become 2 camps. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper, and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted." Isn't that a great prayer? Isn't that a prayer of great humility? the God of my grandfather, the God of my father. There is weight, there is unhurriedness to this prayer. This isn't a snatched prayer. I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. Do I pray like that? This is a good question, I think, to ask. Is God there for me to do what I want? Or am I there for him? Am I his servant? Does God owe me? Or do I owe him? Am I his servant? Verse 10, I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. The group I was with a couple of weeks ago in Montenegro, there was a very elderly and godly lady. Probably about half of us were in the habit of meeting together for 20, 30 minutes in the morning just to pray together. And I heard her say to someone after one of these times, I heard her saying to someone, thank you for praying with such humility. Do I pray with humility? Well, Jacob prays that God would do what he says he would. He would make his people grow. That is my desperate prayer for us here, and I would love it if it were your prayer too, that we grow. Yes, we grow in number, but we would grow in maturity. Hence our aim as a church together to glorify God by making disciples. But specifically, here Jacob is praying for his own safety. He's praying for the safety of his children and their mums, because Jacob is in dire straits. The strong Jacob is realizing he isn't as strong as he thought he was. Hence my heading, from strength to weakness. Jacob then puts in place his strategy. He's going to give Esau 5 vast gifts. 220 goats, 220 sheep, 30 camels, 50 cows and bulls, 30 donkeys. In total, this is a massively extravagant gift. And he plans to send each of these 5 gifts to Esau one at a time, with a gap in between, and each time with a message: this is from your servant Jacob. In context, isn't that a great message? From your servant? Because Jacob had stolen the birthright. Jacob was now to be head of the family. But here he's saying, no, Esau, I am your servant. I was wrong. I repent. At every wedding I take, we sign the registers up the top of the church, and then I help the family line up in order to process out. Jacob lines everyone up. 5 lots of animal herds, his wives, his children, and Jacob is at the back. Jacob is alone. Jacob is vulnerable. Jacob is terrified. All his plans, all his wealth, all his strength. No, Jacob sees how vulnerable and weak he is. From strength to weakness. But secondly, this is a really unwieldy heading, please forgive me for this. God's severe mercy that brings fundamental change. Verse 24, so Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, let me go, for it is daybreak. But Jacob replied, I will not let you go unless you bless me. The man asked him, what is your name? Jacob, he answered. Then the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. Jacob said, please tell me your name. But he replied, why do you ask my name? Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." The sun rose above him as he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. What is going on here? Well, a man appears and wrestles with Jacob all night. Jacob will not submit, and so the man, with just a touch, dislocates his hip. That is eye-wateringly severe agony, isn't it? That is excruciating agony. And yet Jacob won't let him go. Jacob can't let him go because he needs this man. He needs the favour of this man. He needs the blessing of this man. He sees this man as a source of happiness and blessing and help. This man who has crippled him. Will Jacob stumble away? No, bizarrely, he clings to him, will not stop clinging to him. The man asks him, "What is your name?" "My name is Grasper." That's what Jacob means. My name is Jacob. My name is Grasper. Verse 28, "Not anymore," says the man, who we are beginning to realise is God himself. Verse 28, "Then the man said, 'Your name will no longer be Jacob, Grasper, but Israel.'" And probably the word Israel means struggled with God. "Your name will no longer be Grasper with Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." This is an odd story, isn't it? And it still seems a very odd story until we realise that this event sums up the whole of Jacob's life. Jacob has been struggling all his life. Jacob has been fighting all his life. Fighting with Esau even in his mother's womb, fighting with Laban, fighting to control his family, fighting to make a living. And Jacob finally learns here, he finally learns that all this time actually it has been God and his good ways that Jacob has been fighting all down the years. God and his good ways don't involve grasping and manipulating and deceiving and worrying and scheming. But this is the big question concerning Jacob, and maybe this is the big question concerning you. What was Jacob's biggest character flaw? What is your biggest character flaw? I asked that at the beginning. Well, we've seen all along Jacob's grasping and deception and manipulation, but here we see the underlying problem. What caused Jacob to grasp and deceive and manipulate? What was Jacob's biggest character flaw? Here it is. Jacob needed to be self-sufficient. Jacob needed to be independent. Jacob needed to be in control. Jacob didn't want to need God. How do we feel about being dependent upon someone? About losing our independence? I think there's something in us that hates being dependent. Isn't there something in us that hates us asking others for help because it makes us feel weak, it makes us feel needy? What would others think about us? Will we then owe someone? I hate the thought of ending up in a nursing home. Someone else wiping my bottom, being dependent upon someone. But realistically, that may well happen. We hate being dependent, don't we? We hate losing our independence, even losing my driving licence. Don't we all want to be able to say, yep, I can handle anything that comes along? Don't we want to be able to say that? And that's how Jacob had been living his life. He'd been living independently of God, not wanting to need God, not having to need God, not needing God. That was Jacob's life. He's an old man now, so after something like 97 years, he finally came to the realization that if it was down to him, if his extravagant gifts to Esau didn't work, if wave after wave of gifts didn't work, he and his family actually were done for. And now this fight with God, which is simply a culmination of God fighting him for the last 20 years, working on Jacob to get him to surrender. Jacob was fighting for his independence, but God was fighting Jacob for his dependence. Jacob needed to learn that he desperately needed God. Several weeks ago in the all-age sermon, I said that the privilege of being a Christian is that we don't have to come to church, we get to come to church. Now, why is that a privilege? Because I need to meet with God's people every single Sunday if I am to become a disciple and make disciples of others. Isn't God good in giving us the Sabbath? I said a few weeks ago, I don't have to read the Bible, I get to read the Bible. Now, why is that a privilege? Because I need the Spirit through His Word to teach me, to train me, to guide me. Every single day I need that. I said a few weeks ago, I don't have to pray, but I get to pray. Now, why is that a privilege? Because I need to cry out my dependence every single day and probably more frequently than that. But I will only truly see the value of things when I have surrendered my independence. Jacob's fight, Jacob's battle, Jacob is wrestling with surrendering. Jacob is battling with surrendering his independence. And then God does something very wonderful for Jacob, but he does something very painful for Jacob at the same time. God actually causes Jacob agony, doesn't he? Now, actually, had Jacob had eyes to see, he's actually been put into hard situations by God for the last 20 years. The deceiver being deceived by Uncle Laban, the competitive brother given competitive wives, the grasper denied money, and now at the mercy of the brother he once treated mercilessly, agonizingly putting his hip out of joint, permanent damage, he lived for the rest of his life. God kindly did whatever it took to cause Jacob to see he needed to surrender his independence. He needed the God of the universe. And it could have gone two ways, couldn't it? But Jacob cries out to this loving God who had hurt him to bring him to his senses. He cried out to him, I will not let you go unless you bless me. I have fought you and I have overcome my self-sufficiency. I surrender. And I can see that in surrendering to you, I will receive enormous blessing and happiness and safety and security, and my family will too. And Jacob was a changed man. God actually changed his name. Not Jacob the deceiver anymore, Jacob the grasper. No, Israel. He struggles with God and he has overcome. What's he overcome? He's overcome his self-sufficiency. And his descendants will be known as Israelites. Someone showed me a book a couple of days ago, and it was called Weakness is the Way. That's upside down thinking, isn't it? But it's Bible thinking. When I am weak, I realise I can only rely on God. And when I only rely on God, I jettison my own greed, I jettison my own selfishness, my wanting to build up my self-esteem, wanting to build up my self-confidence. The world does tell us you need to believe in yourself, you need to have confidence in yourself, you need to esteem yourself, because it's all down to you. And God was very kindly severe to Jacob, and he caused him pain. And God very kindly is sometimes severe to us. And we experience betrayal and unpleasantness and sickness and indignity and insecurity, and we realise we're out of our depth. We realise finally we're not in control of other people, we're not in control of what happens to us, and then we realise we were never meant to be. We go from a position of strength to a position of weakness, and then we realise that in the Christian life, weakness is the way. Because only when we are weak do we truly cry. And when we truly cry, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ hears and cares and intervenes, and he is the rescuer beyond our wildest dreams. From strength to weakness. God's severe mercy that brings fundamental change. My final heading, grace to get me to lunchtime. This was inspired by very first thing last Wednesday. That very first thing, I'd read a few verses from the Bible and I was overwhelmed, but not in a good way. Wednesday morning, I had an assembly at 9 o'clock. I'd written it, but I knew it was rubbish. Lunchtime, I had a meeting. I had to prepare something for that. I was nowhere near. And then my mind just sort of exploded in the way that our minds do. I thought about my emails. My inbox is just overflowing with stuff. My to-do list, there's stuff on there that is months old, even older than that. And then, of course, I looked at the rest of my life and I just saw an insurmountable pile of problems that I had just no answer to. And I said, Lord, I can't do this. And then I simply said, Lord, would you please just give me grace until lunchtime? And then at lunchtime, I will come back for more. And maybe there's a germ of an idea that is helpful to you. Jettison your independence, express your dependence, not just once a day, but periodically through the day. Stop praying for the whole day at the beginning. Pray just for the next few hours. Lord, I need your presence this morning. And then at lunchtime you can say, well, thank you for that, but I need it for this afternoon. And at tea time, again, thank you, but again, I need it so that I use this evening wisely. And then later, thank you, but I need a quiet mind. I need sleep tonight. Verse 31, the sun rose on Jacob. Isn't that a lovely expression? The sun rose on Jacob because he had seen God face to face. His self-sufficiency was fading. From strength to weakness, that is the way of Jacob. That is the way of discipleship. God's severe mercy that brings fundamental change. God kindly does whatever it takes to change us if we want to change. Grace until lunchtime. Maybe you will find yourself praying, I am going to stop this independence thing. Just give me enough grace for the next few hours. And then I'm going to come back for more. Amen.